Ladies and gentlemen, I want you to step into a moment that, for me, will remain unforgettable not because of the pain it caused, but because of the clarity it gave. Picture a prestigious hotel lounge filled with polished marble floors, soft jazz music floating through the air, and a fragrance of exclusivity and power lingering in every corner. It's the kind of place where names matter, where titles are respected, where appearances are everything. My son walked into that space with confidence, not arrogance, because he'd been raised in boardrooms, groomed in excellence, and taught to hold his head high, no matter where he stood. He wasn't just there for leisure. He was there as a symbol. My company helped build that hotel, and he was there representing our legacy. Dressed in tailored formals, carrying himself with the dignity of a young man raised not just in wealth, but in purpose. He took a seat in the VIP section, the same VIP section we had funded, shaped, and helped maintain. He belonged there, fully, undeniably, and then a staff member approached, no greeting, no hesitation. Just an assumption, a quick glance at his skin, a quicker judgment, and then the cold words. "Excuse me, sir, this section is reserved for VIP guests. We'll need you to move." Now understand, there was no confusion about the rules. He was already in the right place. The only thing that looked out of place to them was him, because just steps away stood a white man, casually observing, saying nothing, doing nothing. And yet, somehow, he was assumed to be the one deserving of that seat. Not because he had checked in with credentials, not because he had reserved the seat, but because his skin whispered worthy. While my son's skin was questioned, my son didn't argue, he didn't yell. He simply stood up, nodded slightly, and walked out. He didn't make a scene, not because he wasn't hurt, but because he was taught that our response is stronger when it's strategic. He sat outside the VIP lounge, silent, his face calm but eyes burning with something deeper, not just embarrassment, but a feeling black people know too well, being made to feel invisible in spaces you rightfully earned. He sent me a short message, just 7 words. "They asked me to move for a white man." That sentence landed heavier than a thunderclap in my chest, because in that moment I wasn't just a CEO. I wasn't just a leader. I was a father, and my son had just been told, in the most subtle yet powerful way, that even in a room built by his family's hands, his seat could still be taken. Not because he lacked status, but because the system still sees color before character, race before reason. That message wasn't a cry for help. It was a signal, and I knew exactly what to do. I walked through the hotel's grand entrance with a purpose you could feel before I even spoke. My footsteps echoed in a lobby that had once welcomed me with smiles, champagne, and respect. But today it welcomed me with silence, the kind that follows an insult too loud to ignore. I wasn't there for a meeting, an interview, or a photo opportunity. I was there because my son had just been humiliated in a space that I helped build. And not just humiliated, dismissed, displaced, reduced to a stranger in his own house. I didn't demand an audience. I didn't need an announcement. I walked straight to the reception and asked for the floor manager. The woman at the desk looked uncertain, sensing my energy but not understanding its depth. Moments later, the manager walked out with a forced smile, the kind built on routine rather than respect. He extended a hand. I didn't take it. I asked him a single question, direct and cold. "Do you know who I am?" He blinked, hesitated, then shook his head and said, "Sir, if there's a seating issue, we're happy to resolve it." A seating issue. That's what they thought. This was a misplaced guest, a misunderstood reservation. They didn't realize this wasn't about a chair. This was about dignity, legacy, the principle that my son didn't just belong in that seat, he earned it through the bloodline of black excellence that preceded him. And someone decided he wasn't enough because they didn't see his name on a plaque or his face in a magazine. But what they didn't realize is that power doesn't always wear a name tag. I calmly pulled out my phone and made one call. Not to customer service, not to the front desk. I called the board. I called the very people who write the checks, who sign the contracts, who have the final say on who stays and who goes. And I said, "This staff just told my son he didn't belong in the VIP lounge, for no reason other than the color of his skin. Handle it." Within 7 minutes, everything changed. The shift supervisor was removed. The front desk manager was dismissed. The entire team on duty was relieved of their positions pending full review and retraining. There were no warnings, no second chances. Not because I wanted revenge, but because I've spent my whole life building spaces where people who look like me, like my son, are no longer asked to step aside. My son stood beside me quietly, watching. I looked at him and said, "Never forget you don't need to prove you belong. They need to prove they deserve your presence." That was more than a teaching moment. That was a generational shift. Because we're not just claiming seats anymore. We're claiming systems, and we're making sure that when our children walk into any room, they're not questioned, they're recognized.